welcome to Crime in Court. We are continuing to read through the Delphi trial transcript. This is the state case in Indiana versus Richard Allen in the homicides of Libby German and Abby Williams. And we are on part 20 of the state's case, and we're going to continue with Captain Dan Dulin, the DNR officer who did the first or initial follow up on Richard Allen when he first came to the police back in 2017. And so we're going to continue with his testimony. We finished in the last episode. We went over Kathy Shank, who was the volunteer who found whatever tip in a misfiled document. I don't know, mislabeled, I guess I should say. Um, which according to them led to them knowing for sure that Richard Allen was their guy, but we still don't understand how that makes him the guy. And then now we've got Dan Dulin, who in his testimony basically thought that Richard Allen was suspicious because what was it? He wanted to meet in a parking lot instead of have Dan Dulin come to him at his home or him go to Dan Dulin at the police station. He wanted to interview in a parking lot, so he thought that obviously made him suspicious enough to be guilty of homicide of two young girls. I don't know, that makes no sense. And then what was his other reasoning? I can't remember now. What was it? Oh, because he lied, because the DNR officer had access to his records, his fishing licenses that he had had over the years. And at some point, Richard Allen changed his height and his weight. He became thinner, so he wanted to put that on his fishing license. And somehow there was some somehow his height got changed also, which I don't know. I mean, these could have been administrative errors too. You never know. But um somehow he got his license changed to be 2 inches taller. He's 5'4", so that would make him 5'6". The perpetrators are probably closer to like 5'10" or more, so it still doesn't even put him anywhere near the size of the bridge guy, but that's where we're at. So let's get into it. Please hit the like button, and we'll continue with Dan Dulin. He is now going to begin cross. So cross examination begins. Mr. Rosie is going to be doing cross for the defense. Rosie says, "Good morning." The witness says, "Good morning. Officer Dulin, how are you today?" "I'm doing well." "Good. So, back in 2017, you received some notification that Mr. Allen may have reached out to law enforcement, right?" "Yes, sir. That's correct." "And the tip actually suggested that he reached out to law enforcement." "That's correct. Yes, sir." "That he was cooperating with the investigation, right?" "Yes, sir." "And turns out he actually made a call to speak with an officer himself, didn't he?" "I'm not sure how they received the initial call or tip." "The tip at least indicated that he had called to speak with an officer, right?" "Yes, sir. It indicated that he self-reported." "All right. In other words, it wasn't an email or a text or anything that reportedly came from him. It was a phone call." "Yeah. It did not indicate on the lead. I believe on the lead sheet it says email, but I'm not sure if it was emailed from whoever he talked to. I have no idea how he contacted law enforcement. I just know that the lead indicates that he did himself contact law enforcement." "And definitely told them that he was out on the trail that day on February 13th?" "Yes, sir." "2017?" "Yes, sir. That's correct." "And he left his phone number the first call, right?" "Yes, sir, he did." And as far as you know, that number was an accurate number? Yes, sir. That's how I contacted him. So you were able to use that number to get a hold of him? Yes, sir. Right? And you ended up meeting him at a grocery store? Yes, sir. And that was shortly after you reached out to him within just very short time, wasn't it? Yes, sir. Same day? Yes, sir. Within minutes or maybe an hour or two? I would say that is an accurate, okay, statement. So instead of, having to like schedule something and put it on the books and be like, let's meet Thursday at this time, this place, Richard Allen's like, no, instead of meeting me at home or meeting me going to you, why don't you just meet me at the grocery store because I'm on my way to whatever place here and there and it's in between and, you know, I'm sure it was like I'm out running errands, let's just whatever. It was like a spur of the moment kind of thing, but yet this officer thinks it's awkward or weird or suspicious, whatever his phrasing was that thought it was suspicious. Um, and he showed up at the store when he said he was going to show up, right? Yes, sir. He was on time? Yes, sir. And you said earlier that, your first preference is to meet with people at their homes, right? Yes, sir. Okay. And you believe that you asked to meet him at his home? Yes, sir. Richard Allen told you that he was on his way to the grocery store, didn't he? I don't recall that, sir. See what I'm saying? Like he was out already probably doing things and he's like, "Can you just meet me here because it's right by the police station or whatever." Like it's closer here than me going home, whatever the case may be. But this officer doesn't recall. Okay. Is it possible that he could have told you that? It's possible that he could have told me that he had to go grocery shopping. Okay. You don't have any notes to suggest either way at this point, right? That's correct. It's not unusual for people that you're in contact with to not want to meet law enforcement officers at their homes, right? Yeah, I don't disagree with that. So he already, like, his first preference is to meet people at their homes, but he has to admit to himself here and on the stand that people don't want law enforcement coming to their homes. People might feel awkward about that. So he didn't want that, maybe. Or it was just whatever reason he was out and about. I mean, sometimes people are just uncomfortable with the concept altogether. Correct. So even this officer who found it suspicious says, no, I understand people do find it uncomfortable for law enforcement to come to their homes. That's a thing. I get it. I admit that fully. Okay. And so you met him at the grocery store down here near, or at least maybe past the Pizza Hut, Dairy Queen? Yeah, I would describe it as just northwest of McDonald's. Okay. I think I'm pointing in the right direction, correct? I believe so. Basically, kind of west of, just of the western edge of town, right? Yes, that's correct. The Save-A-Lot grocery store. Yes, that's correct. Place where a lot of people go, right? Yes, sir. There's only, by my account, two grocery stores in this town, right? That's correct. Yes, sir. One of them's right over here off the town square. Yes, sir. And the other one's Save a Lot. Is that a bigger grocery store? I've actually not been down there. McClellan says, Judge, I'm going to object to relevance at this point. I think we're getting a little bit off topic here. Mr. Rosie says, I'm asking him if it's a place where people commonly go. The court says, and the objection is relevancy. Mr. Rosie says, it is relevant because it has a tendency to prove that he would have wanted to meet him at the grocery store because that's where people commonly go. Overruled. It's a place where people frequent around here, right? Yes, sir. Not a lot of grocery options. That's correct. And that meeting you described earlier as being brief, right? Yes, sir. And he told you at that meeting that he was on the trails between 1:30 and 3:30, correct? That's correct. He didn't say exactly when he got to the trail, did he? No, sir. He just used those time frames. Yes, sir. And even the lead sheet that said, I think it said 12:30. I think it was 12:30 to 3:30. Excuse me. The witness says I thought it was 1 to 3. Oh, 1:30 to 3:30. The same, right? The lead sheet, I believe, says 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock, and he told me 1:30 to 3:30. Yeah, right. Thank you for that. I saw the other part of the lead sheet. Okay. But it doesn't say. The lead sheet doesn't say when between those time periods that you reported he was there, right? It just says between. That he was there between 1 and 3, according to the lead sheet. I might not understand your question. I'm sorry. Well, it doesn't say. It doesn't reference specifically what time he got there and what time he left. Those are just blocks of time. Like, I felt that when he told me he was there between 1:30 and 3:30, I felt like that was the time he was physically there. I'm talking about the lead sheet. Yeah, I felt like when I read the lead sheet, it was indicating he was there at the location between 1 and 3. Okay. That was your interpretation of the lead sheet? Yes, sir. And we have the lead sheet in evidence. We can make our own interpretation. Yes, sir. That was my interpretation of the lead sheet. Yes, sir. Okay. You don't know how long he was there that day, right? Aside from him saying that he was there till 3:30, I don't know how long he was physically there. He told me he was there till 3:30. Okay, 1 second, please. Yep. If your report, Exhibit 230, says Mr. Allen was on the trail between 13:30 and 15:30, right? Yes, sir. Between those two times. Right. That's what you said. Right. Which would indicate that he got there at 1:30 and he left there at 3:30. And that was your interpretation? Yeah, based on what he told me. Okay, and there was nothing about Mr. Allen on that day that you, by the way, was that February the 17th that you met him? No, I have it documented as the 18th. 18th, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's not on Exhibit 230, right? You didn't reference the date on there. No, there's no date on 230. Okay, so the 18th that you met him, and on that day, there was nothing about him that struck you as unusual, was there? No, sir. And he wasn't armed, right? Not that I know of. That's something you would kind of pay attention to, right? Yep. And you don't recall what he was wearing that day? I do not. Or what his overall appearance was? I do not. You told me you thought it was probably a 5 to 10 minute conversation you had with him. That's an estimation. It wasn't a very long conversation. And there was nothing so unusual about that you felt the need to direct him to the police department or take him there and interview him, right? That's correct. And you said earlier, Mr. McLeland asked you that you probably took some notes on the back of your tip sheet. That's correct. And you don't know what happened to those notes, do you? No, sir. They're lost? Well, I would say after I put them in the Word document, then I no longer needed the notes because I've transcribed them over to the information I was turning in. So you told me before you threw them away. Yeah, I would say I probably threw them away when I was done with them. And those notes would be the best evidence of what he told you on that day, right? Mr. McClellan says, Judge, I'm going to object. It's a characterization. He's testified. He put those notes directly into a Word document, so I'd object to the question. The court says characterization. Mr. Rosie says, I'm asking him about his notes. It's relevant. Court says, well, it's the characterization. Sustained. Ugh. So it's the way he characterized the notes, I guess. I don't know. That it would be the best evidence. Yeah, I guess. It's the way he's characterizing them as the best evidence. Those notes, do you agree with me? Those notes would be the most accurate. Judge, same objection. Sustained. This is garbage. He's not allowed to ask that. That's a typical normal question to get to, what evidence was or wasn't turned over, why it wasn't. This should absolutely be allowed to be discussed. And you don't have any independent recollection as you sit here today about your conversation with him on that day, do you? The specific? Beyond what's in your report. No, I mean the specific recollection I have is the part about him telling me about being on his stock ticker looking at his phone. And I can say that when investigator Mullin, who we'll hear from next again, when investigator Mullin called me and asked if I had any recollection of Mr. Allen, I didn't. But as soon as I read my notes on that and read the part about the stock ticker, then I remembered the rest of the like the rest of the stuff in my notes. That was the part that stuck out to me. So, if you ask if I remember anything specific, I definitely remember the conversation about him being on his phone, being at a stock ticker. I took your statement in this room back here, on March 20th, right? Yes, sir. It was a deposition. Yes, sir. You've taken depositions before. Yes, sir. There was an oath administered, and you swore to tell the truth. Yes, sir. All that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. I asked you that question back in March, didn't I? And you told me that you didn't have any independent recollection of what he told you at that point, right? I would say that I don't remember exactly what the question was, and I'm sure you could read it to me, but as far as an independent recollection that was specific of the entire meeting with Richard Allen, there was no independent entire recollection of that. Would it help to look at your deposition transcript to refresh your memory about what you told me? I can. May I approach, Judge? You may. Let me just direct your attention to page 29, lines 18 through 29. Just make a quick look at those, or take a quick look at those. Okay. Take as long as you need. No, that's fine. Do you want me to read them? Did you read it? Did. No, I don't want you to read it out loud. Oh, okay. I just want you to take a look at it. Yep. So on that day, I asked you whether or not you had any independent recollection beyond anything that you said in detail on that. Strike that. I asked if you had any independent recollection of what he said to you that day, didn't I? Yes, sir. And you told me, no, sir, right? Yes, sir. And you had spoken with Mr. Mullin at that point, hadn't you? You've already had that conversation with him? Oh, yes, sir. You didn't know Rick Allen before the day you met him in 2017. Not at all. And you never made any attempt to reach back out to him after that, right? No, sir. Now, you testified earlier. Well, let's talk about your report for a minute. You had the wrong name on your report from the beginning, right? The Richard Allen Whiteman. I was provided the wrong name. Okay, and then So it wasn't your mistake? I corrected the name in my report that I submitted back to the investigation center. So somebody else made a mistake about the name. I have no idea if that's what Mr. Allen told the person he talked to and used the wrong name. Really? Or if the person who took the initial report entered the wrong name. I know that the lead sheet that I was provided, which is the one that the jury has for the exhibit, has the name as Rick Allen Whiteman. And then when I met with him and found out that his name was Richard Allen, I corrected that, which is why I thought it was important to include the BMV information. And I started my narrative with Mr. Allen, so that would be corrected. Just to make sure we're all clear, you're not suggesting that he was using some kind of an alias or anything, are you? No. You asked me of how I thought the name got put there that somebody else made that mistake. I don't know if somebody else made that mistake or if that's what they were provided. So Richard Allen just gave the wrong name, even though he was giving a tip for a double homicide of two young girls. Don't you think it would be suspicious if he gave an alias to the police? I mean, that's most criminals are pretty dumb, but I think that would be pretty stupid because you're still giving the name, just not. I don't know. This makes no sense. But okay, he says no, he's not saying that. That's just a possible explanation. Whatever. But you're not suggesting, as we sit here today, that he was using an alias? Judge, objection, asked and answered. He asked me a question when I asked him a question. Sustained. I'm sorry? It was asked and answered. Sustained. Was he trying to hide his identity? Not. Mr. McLeland says, Judge, I'm going to object. It calls for speculation. Uh, Captain Dulin's testified as to what his thoughts are on why the name was what it was on the lead sheet. So I think it calls for speculation, one, and I think it's been asked and answered too. Mr. Rosie says, Judge, the court says it's speculative. He can't say this witness can't say what your client thought. Mr. Rosie says he testified earlier that he was changing his identity on his driver's license, on his fishing license. That's correct, says the court. So it's relevant, says Mr. Rosie. She says it's been asked and answered and has thought about your. He says, I'll move on. This is so annoying. Like, why don't you fight harder for this? He's just like, yeah, okay, fine. Because she's not going to like cave. But I think they could have done more arguments there. Anyways, the court says clients is speculation. Mr. Rosie says, thank you. You asked to look at his phone, right? Yes, sir. And he gave that phone to you? Yes, sir, he did. And your goal was to get the serial number off that phone. Identifying numbers. I don't know the serial number, but yes, sir. Lots of numbers on the phone, right? Yes, sir. That's correct. And you just wanted to get something to make sure that you could identify it? Yes, sir. That's correct. And you got that, right? Yes, sir. Why does he have to say sir with every answer? And he actually assisted you in finding that. He did. And there was a reference on the report about some possible follow up, isn't that right? Yes, sir. Suggesting that there might be some more questions to ask if someone chose to follow up later, right? That's correct. So made, there's a reference in the report about some possible follow up, suggesting that there might be more questions that the police might want to look into if they chose to follow up with Richard Allen, which they didn't do. So you didn't ask him what he was wearing on February 17th, 2017 when he was on that trail, did you? That's correct. You didn't ask him what he was driving on that day, did you? That's correct. And there was some discussion about him possibly parking at the old Farm Bureau building, right? Yes, sir. But you weren't really sure if he used the words or not. Correct. So at first, you weren't really sure if you were talking about the same place, the way I understood. So that conversation at first. So the name of the building is the part that's an error on my report, but we discussed about the physical location or described the physical location of where the vehicle was parked. So I am 100% confident that based on our conversation, he was at the building that is slightly north of the Freedom Bridge on the east side of the Heartland near the Anderson's grain facility. And if I put that it was the Farm Bureau building, that was an error on my part, but the knowledge of the exact building where he was parked, there's no question in my mind that it was the old DCS office. You thought you cleared it up with him? Yes, sir. Did you guys get out a map or anything or take a look at a map? No, sir. So whatever was cleared up was just cleared up by a conversation? Yes, sir. All right. And you mentioned that there was a reference to a change in height and weight on his 2017 fishing license. Yes, sir. Or fishing and hunting license. Is that it was a fishing license? It was a fishing license. Yes, sir. Okay. And that license would have been purchased in April of 2017, right? Yes, sir. And you don't know who changed or who, I guess, to be more technical, you don't know who inputted that information into that software program, do you? No, sir. It's possible for somebody to get online and buy a license for somebody else, isn't it? It is. I mean, actually, I've got the app on my phone. You can get on the app and have sub accounts in your app, can't you? Yes, sir. You don't know if his wife was purchasing that license for him. I don't know. Or somebody else. No, sir. It does tell me whose credit card was used, and without looking at the document, I couldn't tell you that. But you have to have a username and a password to get into the system, and then it authenticates by calling a phone or sending a text message. So someone has to be able to verify that, and then it also documents the credit card that was used. So you noted that there was a change from 5.4 to 5.6, right? Yes, sir. 5.4 to 5.6, right? Yes, sir. And there was a weight change that was about 15 pounds or so? Yes, sir. All right. But you also had a chance to look back at the historic records, as you said, right? Yes, sir. And as it turns out, if you look, I think you said you looked back all the way back to 2005, maybe. Yes, sir. So roughly 12 years? That's correct. And there were many other references on those licenses to him being 5'6", weren't there? Yes, sir. In fact, oh, you failed to mention that on direct. Yes, sir. In fact, when we had the deposition, you asked the same question and I provided the same answer, and there were many other references to him being 5'6", weren't there? Yes, sir. And then I went after, no, there's no question. Okay. Yeah, you answered the question. There were many references to him being 5'6" over the 12 years of him getting fishing licenses. So this wasn't the first time he's registered himself as 5'6", or somebody registered him as 5'6". He says, "Thank you." And so the change in April of 2017 was at least consistent with what had been reported on his license historically. On the printed copies that you were provided, yes, that's correct. Okay. And so there's really not much that you can discern from seeing that information, is there? Aside from after our deposition, I looked back in the system. Oh, so he had to go back and do some digging after something nagged at him from his deposition. I went back and looked at the system, and when you change something and print previous licenses, it updates the header with the physical information. How do we know that? Do you have someone from the software telling us that? You can't just blindly tell us this, sir. So what I did to prove that is I looked at my son's hunting licenses. He's 20 years old currently, and he's 5'10" and 200 pounds. And as he updated his weight and height, as he alleged in the system, it changes that heading. So if I go and print a license from him from 2011, when he was 7 years old, that license, if printed now, today, it says that he's 5'11" and 200 pounds. So if you were to print his licenses, if he had his licenses from the time he printed them, at the time that he would have at that time they would all have said 5'4". You don't know that. You're totally speculating here. If I print the licenses today, they are all 5'6". The document that I have from the point of sale system shows the current changes in one column and the new data in the second column, and that remained consistent until the April 1st of 2017 where he changed the date from, or changed the height from 5'4" to 5'6", if that makes sense. The next question is, you finished? Yes, sir. So let me see if I understand this. What you're saying is that if somebody reported in 2016 that they were 5'4", and then in 2017 they changed it to 5'6", then all the historical records would automatically be changed. If you printed it after the change, it prints the current physical information on any document that you print after that change. So your system is then changing information because the software causes that to happen? Only if the information was changed by the user. But you don't really know then, because you've never actually seen his actual licenses from all the way back to 2005 and what they said. You just know they've changed, right? Based on the data that's collected from the user input. But when I talked to you back in March, you said that you didn't have any reason to believe that he was trying to be deceptive with you, did you? That's correct. And you told me that there was nothing unusual about the fluctuations in someone's weight, 10 to 15 pounds in a year, is there? I agree with that. Now, Mr. McClelland, when he was questioning you earlier, you said you got involved in this investigation in 2017, just after the girls were found, and then I think you said that you had many tasks. Is that the word you used? Other tasks, right? Yes, sir. And you talked a little bit about some of those today, right? Yes, sir. One of those tasks was for you to go out and interview people. Is that right? That's correct. And you were given a list of cell phone numbers that were associated with the towers. Yes, sir. And if I recall, you followed up on a lot of those cell phone leads, right? Yes, sir. There were dozens of them, right? There was. So basically, these numbers would be, I'm kind of trying to envision, would be just a sheet of raw data with a bunch of numbers that were associated with one of the nearby towers, correct? Yes, sir, just a list of phone numbers. And you're just kind of making cold calls, for lack of a better phrase, right? That's very accurate. Yes, sir. And there were lots of people that you talked to during those conversations that reported being in that particular area around the trailhead on that date and time. It was a larger area than the trailhead, so it included people passing through the Hoosier Heartland or State Road 25. It included several people that lived in an area around that trail, so it wasn't specific to just the trail. Okay, but you told me there were lots of people out in that area. That's what you told me back in March. Absolutely. There were a lot of numbers on that list. You also did a canvas of the crime scene as part of your other tasks in this case? Yes, sir. Mr. McClelland says, Judge, it's outside of the scope. I'm going to object. Mr. Rosie says he testified earlier he was involved in other tasks. Overruled. And tell the jury when you went out to the crime scene. I had been out at the crime scene numerous times throughout the investigation. I don't have an exact list of dates and times that correlate to it, but I have officer logs on our time management system that we enter every day, and there are several entries that indicate that I was at the crime scene throughout the first week of my involvement. Throughout the first week? I mean, at least during the first week, there were several times that we would go back out there to do different things very early on. As far as a canvas that you reference, we had officers that included our dive team members, and we walked from the bridge on 300 North down to, down the creek, looking just for evidence, things that we could possibly find. We canvassed a lot of the wooded area looking for evidence that may have been left behind, or well, when do you think the first time was that you were out there? Was it before you talked to Rick or after? I would say, if I remember right on my officer logs, it would have been on February 7th, so the day before I talked to Rick. So 3 days after the girls were discovered. Yes, yes, sir. And when you got out there, you found some items that caught your attention, right? Yes, sir. And those items were sticks and branches, right? That's correct. And those of different shapes and sizes? Yes, sir. Were they kind of piled up, stacked up together, or at least in a similar area? They were within a, excuse me, a 4 or 5 foot area. Okay, and you, excuse me, immediately thought, hey, I need to get a hold of somebody about these sticks and branches, right? Yes, sir. So one of the reasons why you thought that was because there was blood on them? Yes, sir. And so, but you knew the scene had already been processed, hadn't it? Yes, sir. I mean, the crime scene techs were done at that point, weren't they? There were several times the crime scene techs had been back to the area. Right, but it had not been or right, but it had been released, meaning the crime scene had been released. Yes, essentially. And just for those people that don't read police reports all the time, released means essentially the tape. Did people have access to the crime scene other than just CSIs, right? There was still crime scene tape around the area, but it was a very remote wooded area, so, but no security. Exactly. Anybody, I could walk down there and walk through the tape? Yes, sir. And you felt free to walk in there too, right? I don't know that I felt free to walk in there. I mean, I was there for work reasons. It wasn't like I would go back just to on my day off and check it out. That's probably a poor question. My point is that there was not anyone there controlling the traffic flow in and out of the crime scene like there is in a typical sense when these things originate, right? I would agree with you. Yes. Okay. And so you called the crime scene techs and suggested that they get out and collect the sticks, right? Remember, they didn't collect all the sticks that were on top of the girls. They just took the sticks and moved them and then took the girls off out of the scene. But the sticks were collected later on. So this must be what that is. But he's the one apparently that said they should come back out and collect the sticks. I don't know if I spoke directly with the crime scene tech. I contacted somebody at the investigation center and just relayed the information that those materials were still out there. And so they eventually came out and collected those items. That's correct. You spend a lot of time in the woods. Yes, sir. As part of your job in the job as a DNR officer. Yes, sir. And you spend time in the woods in this case. Yes, sir. And in particular, in that woods out there by the Monon High Bridge? Yes, sir. And it's not unusual for you to spend time in areas that are on waterways, like the creek out there, like Deer Creek. That's correct. Are you actually familiar with the area, kind of generally? I thought you told me. As far as I would say the route of the creek, I mean, I'd not been specifically in that woods or on foot in that section of creek. I think what you said is you've worked this general geographic. Yes, that greater geographic area is what you told me, right? Absolutely, yes, sir. So this being here in the Delphi area. Yes, sir. And one of your responsibilities as a DNR officer is to work the waterways, too. Yes, sir. That's kind of your office, right? That's correct. And when you went out there that day, at least one of those days, you immediately noticed that there were some deer stands out there, didn't you? That's correct. Those are things you kind of catch too, because it's part of your job, right? That's correct. It's noticeable. Yes. There are some signs that people had been out there and hunting, right? Yes, sir. And that you would agree with me that that area appears to have gotten some hunting and fishing pressure. Judge, I'm going to object to the form of the question. Sustained. Do you believe that there are people that hunt out there? That's correct. Yes, sir. Judge, I'm going to object. Based on what? Mr. McClellan says it calls for speculation. Mr. Rosie says he's sustained. Judge, he's got firsthand knowledge. He said he saw the deer stand. I've sustained the objection. No legal basis for anything. I just don't want you to ask the question. It's not uncommon to find shell casings, both spent and unspent, in a wooded area like this, is it? As it relates to hunting? Yeah, just any kinds of shells. Yeah, so I would say that the type of cartridge or caliber would be associated with something that would be legally like that you could legally hunt with. So a 12 gauge shotgun slug or on the ground, or a 12 gauge shells from someone that's been hunting squirrels or ducks, you would find that kind of stuff on the ground. It's not uncommon, is it? Like people could just go out in the woods and shoot, especially like there's properties around here that own land. Ron Logan owned the land that the girls lived or were found on. And it's like large areas of land. You can just go out and shoot your own personal handgun if you wanted to. Anyways, he says it's not uncommon, isn't it? Is it to find spent shell casings or other types of unspent shell casings in the woods, is it? Objection asked and answered. Sustained. Oh my God, this woman. You didn't tell me. That's not the way you answered this when I asked you that back in March, is it? Judge, withdraw the objection. Go ahead. You told me in March if you're going to impeach him, it wasn't common. Impeach him properly, says the court. Thank you, Judge. The court says thank you. Did you tell me when I took your deposition that it was not uncommon to find spent and unspent shell casings? That's correct. And this is a 40 caliber round we're talking about here, right? Yes, sir. Do people out in the countryside often have handguns? Yes, sir. Is there anything unusual about people shooting these handguns in wooded areas? It's not I'm not exactly sure where people shoot them, but there's no prohibition against it. Okay, you've seen that happen, right? Yes, sir. And do you agree with me that there are even hunters and fishermen that carry handguns with them when they go out hunting and fishing? Judge, I'm going to object to the form of the question. Sustained. Is it common to see hunters and fishermen who carry handguns with them when they go out to hunt and fish? Yes, sir. 1 second, Your Honor. Sig Sauers were a standard law enforcement issue back in 2017. Yes, sir. And it's a pretty popular firearm to see in your line of work, isn't it? Yes, sir. You familiar with the words Smith& Wesson? Yes, sir. Very popular manufacturer of firearms and ammunition. Yes, sir. One of the most popular that you'll see in the market, right? I believe so, yes. I don't have anything further. The court says, Mr. McLeland? He says, thank you, Your Honor, and now we begin redirect. Mr. McLeland says, Captain Dulin, I want to focus on the fishing license that Richard Allen purchased. You stated you didn't remember the. Mr. Rosie says, Judge, I'm going to object. He tested because it's not consistent with the testimony. He testified that he doesn't know who purchased that license. Judge says, that's correct. Mr. McLellan says, I can rephrase the question. Rephrase it. Thank you, says Mr. Rosie. Mr. McClellan continues, you testified you didn't know who purchased the license, correct? That's correct. Were you able to, in your search, find identifying information about who purchased those licenses? Were you able to find the IP address of where they were purchased from? Yes, sir. Were you able to find the credit card that was used to purchase those? Yes, sir. Were you able to find emails associated with who purchased those? Yes, sir. And you testified that you didn't recall what credit card was used to purchase those. Is that correct? That's correct. If you had an opportunity to look at your report, would that refresh your memory? Yes, sir. Did you document it in your report? Yes, sir. I'm going to show you a document. Does this accurately reflect what's in your report? Yes, sir. And by reviewing that, would it help refresh your recollection about which credit card was used to purchase those fishing licenses? Yes, sir. And so, whose credit card was used to purchase the fishing license? My report indicates Richard Allen's credit card ending in 2968 was used for both purchases. When you say both purchases, what do you mean? Were there two licenses purchased? It says, yes, one for Kathy and one for Richard Allen. And were you able to determine the IP address for who purchased those? Yes, sir. And was it the same IP address? Yes, sir. And when someone purchases a license, do they have to use a username or login to be able to purchase that license? Yes, sir. And do you recall, if you recall, do you know what username was used in this case? I do not recall that. I want to take you back to the interaction with Richard Allen. He allowed you to look at his phone. Is that correct? That's correct. And you gathered some identification information or ID number from that phone? That's correct. Did you go into the phone, meaning did you open the phone and look at text messages? No, sir. Did you look at pictures in the phone? No, sir. Did you go to the phone and look at any applications that he had? No, sir. Did he allow you to go into the phone? I don't believe that I asked him to do that. Okay. I don't, so it's not something that he said absolutely not. The ID number, was that, did you get that from the exterior of the phone or by going into the phone, opening the phone up? I don't remember exactly, but I know that he and I were both looking. I was originally looking for what is referred to as an IMEI number, and he didn't immediately find that, and he he and I had a discussion about, well, try going to your settings and then about, just, how to find that. And that's where we obtained the numbers. I don't remember if it was on the phone, inside the phone, but we kind of worked on that together. But during the time the phone was being manipulated, was that something he was doing? Yes, sir. I don't have any other questions, Judge. Thank you. Mr. Rosie? Now we've got some recross. You don't know if he was manipulating anything, do you? No, sir. And when you're saying what you're saying is that the software program essentially auto-populates retroactively when you enter current information. Is that my understanding of what you're saying? Yes, sir. So you really don't know what the information said before, if it said 5-4 or not. It lists in one column current information and it actually lists it in inches, and then it has another column that shows the information that was changed and then the date that it was changed. It's all on one printout. So, right, but in this case, it's just 2016 and 2017, correct? Just those 2 years. You're looking at the year prior and then the year that information was changed. Essentially, yes, I believe. Right. It doesn't compare every year all the way back to 2005, like he originally made it out to be. Correct. Correct. It's only saying the change from that last time he, made a purchase. Yes, sir. After you met Richard in 2022, you didn't hear another thing about him, did you? In 2017, you didn't hear anything else until 2022, right? That's correct. Yes, sir. This case drew a lot of media attention, didn't it? It did. Coast to coast. Yes, sir. And I'm sure there's been times when you sat and thought about what happened out there on that bridge, right? Yes, sir. I like this. I like Rosie's style of questioning because he feels like I feel like he's always leading up to something, and he's good. Like he makes me want him more. Anyways, I'm sure that there's been times when you sat and thought about what happened out there on the bridge, right? Yes, sir. And not one of those times did you ever think, hey, Richard Allen, that guy I talked to at Save a Lot, might be a guy? That's correct. So he never once suspected him, even though he now finds some of his behaviors suspicious. And you work on hunches, don't you? You're a police officer. I'm going to object, Judge, to the form of the question. It's well outside the range of direct. Well outside, says the court. I'll withdraw it. Sustained. I have nothing further. The court asks, does anybody on the jury have any questions for Captain Dulin? Oh, there's one, I see. Mr. McClellan says, Judge, while the court's reviewing that question, would they allow me to publish we now have a redacted state's exhibit to publish to the jury? You may. Mr. Rosie says no objection. The court says that would be 231. Counsel approach. And now we've got questions for the jury. We're going to go to a quick sidebar or questions from the jury, I should say, or at least one. And it's going to go to a sidebar very briefly before they read it in front of everybody. The court reads the question. First time you interviewed Mr. Allen, what was his hair like? No objection, says Mr. Rosie. Oh, we have more than one. Court says the packet you turned in was stated to contain a lead sheet, Word document, and the BMV info. Was this a new lead sheet you could print from your car computer if the one lead sheet you wrote on was thrown away? Mr. McClellan says, I'm okay with it. Court says, and we're going to have to break. Mr. Rosie says, I'm sorry. Yeah, we're going to have to break after this then. Mr. Rosie says, okay. Sidebar conference concluded. Now these are read in front of the jury and to the witness. Captain, the first time you interviewed Mr. Allen, what was his hair like? I don't recall. Any follow-up, Mr. McClelland? No, Your Honor. Mr. Rosie? No, ma'am. The packet you turned in was stated to contain the lead sheet, Word document, and BMV info. Was this a new lead sheet you could print from your car computer if the one you wrote on was thrown away? No, the only lead sheet I did not have access to the system to print new lead sheets. So what I would have done is if I would have taken what my Word document and the BMV information that I included in the packet, and then I would run it through their printer, their copier. So it's only copying the top sheet of the lead sheet and everything that I had. And then after I got done with that, I would staple the information and submit it to the command center. And then I would hold on to that stuff probably, just as I was making my notes at the end of the day or the end of the week of the things that I accomplished. And once I no longer needed that, I would scan that information into scan it and email it to me. So I had a copy of it, which is the stuff that I found when I was contacted by investigator Mullin, and then I would just get rid of the hard copy after I had it scanned into my files. That was a long-winded answer. Mr. McClelland, no questions, Judge. The court says, Mr. Rosie, no questions. The court says, all right. Thank you, Captain. You may step down. The witness says, thank you. The court says, all right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is a good time for us to take a quick break, give you an opportunity to get up and move around a little. While you're outside the courtroom, please keep your minds open. Please don't form any final opinions or conclusions about anything. You may discuss the evidence that you've heard, but please only if all 16 of you are present in the jury room at the same time, and then please don't deliberate. Gentlemen, all rise. The jury leaves at 11:17 a.m. The court says, all right, we'll take 15 minutes. Jody, you can go off the record. They do. Now they come back. The court says, we're back on the record, and are we ready to continue? Mr. McClelland says, yes, Your Honor. Mr. Rosie, we ready? Yeah. Bring them up, says the court. And would counsel approach real quick? Now we have a very quick sidebar here that says, we're going to break at 12:15 for lunch, just so Mr. McClelland says, okay. The court says, okay. Sidebar concluded. Bailiff says, all rise. The jury enters the courtroom. The bailiff says, thank you. You may be seated. The court says, thank you, gentlemen. Mr. McClelland, you may call your next witness. Mr. McClelland says, Your Honor, State of Indiana would call investigator Steve Mullin. is now like the fifth or sixth time I think he's been on the stand. Maybe not that many, but he's been on the stand quite a bit. So this is not his first time. And it's a little bit longer than his usual time. So just brace yourself. I know we've already gone 55 minutes here, but it's going to go a little bit longer just because Mullin's testimony was too short to put in his own, and the person after him I need to put in their own video, and I needed to add him basically to this video. I kind of was forced, so it's a little bit longer of a video. We're going to get to direct examination of Stephen Mullin, who is on the stand yet again. Mr. McLeland will be doing the questioning for the state. Will you state your name, please? Stephen L. Mullin. And again, how are you employed? Investigator for the Carroll County Prosecutor's Office. Investigator Mullin, you've testified in this court proceeding prior to this. Is this correct? Yes, I have. And so I want to fast forward to September 21st of 2022. What happened on that day? I received a phone call from Tony Liggett. Remember him? He's coming up soon too. And was that the phone call? And what was that phone call concerning? The phone call was from Tony Liggett. He advised me that he had located some paperwork consisting of a report generated by Lieutenant Dulin about a Richard Allen, saying, well, once you got that information, what did you do next? I then reached out to Lieutenant Dulin, and spoke with him regarding that information and asked if he had anything additional regarding that information he provided in the report that we had discovered. And did then Lieutenant Dan Dulin at that point forward the information that he had pertaining to Richard Allen onto you? Yes, he did. He forwarded it to myself and Tony Liggett. And did you go back and review if anyone had spoke to Richard Allen since Dan Dulin contacted him in 2017? Yes. We looked carefully to find out if anyone had talked to Richard Allen since the time that Dulin had taken that information, but we found out that no one had spoken with him. After that, did you review Richard Allen's BMV information? Yes, we did, and we found that he had two vehicles that were registered to him. Can you describe those vehicles? One was I think, 2006 Ford 500, and the other was a 2016 black Ford Focus hatchback. With that information, what did you do next? Well, we went to the Hoosier Harvest Store security video and wanted to see if we could locate either one of the vehicles specifically within the time period specified on Lieutenant Doolin's report that Mr. Allen had told him that he had been to the location. Well, can you tell me that time frame? The time period that was specified in the report was around 1:30 p.m. on the 13th. Prior to that, were you able to obtain any kind of photographs of Richard Allen's vehicles? Yes. Tell me about that, please. So, Tony Liggett had stopped at the CVS location where Mr. Allen worked and had found the vehicle which he drove, identifying it by the license plate number or registration number, and took pictures of it and brought it back out to the central when we were looking at the Hoosier Harvest Store video so that we could see if we could find the vehicle on the video. I'm going to show you what's been marked as States Exhibit 244 and 245. What are those? This is the picture that Tony Liggett took of Richard Allen's vehicle as it was parked in the parking lot at the CVS parking lot in Delphi. Do you know when Detective Liggett took those photos? It was a matter of days, a few days after we had found the report. I'm not sure if I could say what day it was exactly. And have you seen these photos prior to court today? Oh, yes. And are these the photos Detective Liggett at the time showed you once he completed the photographing that vehicle? Yes. Judge, the state would move to admit what's been marked as States Exhibit 244 and 245. No objection, says Baldwin. The court says, all right, without objection, they're admitted, and would ask to publish those to the jury. Judge, please, says McClelland. The judge says, you may, and they are. Once you obtained those photos, what did you do next? Well, as I said, we went back and looked at the Hoosier Harvest Store video to see if we could find a vehicle matching that description in the basic time area zone of that time period that Lieutenant Dulin had specified in his report. And what time period did you look at on the video? I looked from noon or before that even until sometime around 1 o'clock and beyond that. Okay, so all the tips and everything say 1:30 to 3:30, but Stephen Mullin, who was kind of like one of the lead investigators in this, as he was the Delphi Chief of Police, he was doing the investigation looking for this car of Richard Allen's on the video from the Hoosier Harvest Store from the hours of noon to 1. Not 1:30 to 3:30 or 1 to 3 like Captain Dan Dulin or Kathy Shank are telling you is what the tip was from them, or what Richard Allen is saying the time was. They have to say that in order to make it fit, because the girls weren't there until after 1:30. That's why they have to make it seem that Richard Allen said that time. And on that footage, you were able to find a vehicle that matched that description? Yes, I did. When did you see that vehicle come into frame on that video? The vehicle was seen entering the frame of that area between at the edge of the Hoosier Harvest Store security video, which started on County Road 300 North, entering the frame around 1:27 p.m. on the 13th, and I believe 1:27:35 when it was first appeared. Mr. Baldwin says, Judge, it's a little bit late, perhaps, but I wanted to object to the form of the question, or at least ask preliminary questions, if I may. The court says, what about the form of the question? Mr. Baldwin says, I'll strike that and ask a preliminary question. She says, you may. Thank you. A minute ago, the prosecutor asked you if you saw a vehicle that matched the vehicle on the Hoosier Harvest Store that you think is Richard Allen's vehicle. Is that correct? I believe so, yes. But that's just your opinion that it matched, is that correct? Yes, it's my opinion based on facts concerning how the vehicle appears, characteristics, descriptions, shape, size, time period, when it was there. Yes. Mr. Baldwin says, it's your opinion. You don't know that it's an actual match? I believe it is. Okay, and I understand that's what your belief is, but I'm asking, you don't know that it is a match. I believe that it is. Mr. Baldwin says, I'm going to object to the question being formed that this is a match. I think the proper way is that you believe that this is a match. That is your opinion. Any response, says the court? Mr. McClelland says, Judge, my only response is that I believe Investigator Mullin can testify about his opinions as to whether or not the vehicle he sees on the Hoosier Harvest Store video matches the description of Richard Allen's vehicle, and so I would ask the court to allow me to ask that question. He can testify to his opinion. Overruled. Investigator Mullin, I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 233 through 242. Yes? I want you to describe what those exhibits are. These exhibits here show a kind of frame by frame or second by second of the vehicle belonging to Mr. Allen that traveled past the objection to his characterization. Did you just say that it was Mr. Allen's? I did. I would object to that. The court says, refer to it as a vehicle. The witness says, yes, Your Honor. The vehicle, as it passes the camera from second by second, well, I think 9 seconds from 1:27:35 to 1:27:44. And these progression of photos, they show the vehicle entering from which direction? The vehicle enters from the east and travels to the west until it disappears off the camera frame. And did these series of photos show that vehicle as it travels from east to west? Yes, it does. And where are these photos taken from? The photos are taken from the Hoosier Harvest Store video camera, the security camera, which is located on the west side of the Hoosier Harvest Store building. Judge, state would move to admit what's been marked as State's Exhibits 233 and through 242. No objection. Without objection, they're admitted. I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 243. Can you describe that, what that is? This is a close-up to a little bit closer view of the vehicle as it is traveling on 300 North that shows. And where is that picture from? It was taken from the Hoosier Harvest Store security camera. And it's a zoomed in version of the vehicle that you see? Yes, it is. Zoomed in. Judge, the state would move to admit what's been marked as State's Exhibit 243. No objection. All right, without objection, 243 is admitted. And then would ask to publish those set of exhibits to the jury. I've got them in one packet for ease of handling. Okay, you may. Mr. McLeland says, thank you, Judge. Did everyone on the jury get one packet and one photo? Court says you may proceed. Mr. McLeland says, thank you, Judge. Investigator Mullin, I'm going to ask you to approach the map for a moment, please, and can you explain for the jury? Thank you. Can you show the jury on the map which direction the vehicle was headed? The vehicle that was depicted in the picture is headed this direction. I can show, that's fine, go ahead. Show that it's traveling in front of the Hoosier Harvest Store, it appears here, and then travels west on County Road 300 North. I think it disappears somewhere in this vicinity. And you're able to tell from the time on the Hoosier Harvest security footage that when that vehicle was traveling on the road, is that correct? Yes. And what was the time that it entered the spectrum of view of the security camera? According to the security camera footage, again, the camera, that's time on the camera adjusted for 55 minutes fast. So the camera was incorrect. The time on the camera was incorrect. So they have to adjust it as we were told. And it appears it would have been appeared here at this location at 1:27:35. And then, may I continue? Nope, that's fine. Go ahead and have a seat back at the witness stand, please. Investigator Mullin, do you believe the vehicle that's in the Hoosier Harvest Store video at the time matches the description of Richard Allen's vehicle? I do. I'm going to show you again what's been admitted into evidence as State's Exhibits 244 and 245, which are the pictures of Richard Allen's vehicle at CVS, and the State's Exhibit 243, which is a blown up picture of the vehicle from the Hoosier Harvest Store surveillance video. Will you take a look at those three photographs, please? Yes. Now, is it fair to say in the Hoosier Harvest Store video, you can't see the license plate of the video that's on the video? You can't see the license plate of the vehicle that's on the video. Yes, that's correct. You also can't see the identification or the VIN number of the vehicle. Is that correct? That's correct. You also can't see the driver. Is that correct? That is correct. You cannot see the driver. What distinctive characteristics from Richard Allen's vehicle leads you to believe that the vehicle in the Hoosier Harvest Store video is his vehicle? This is so wrong on so many levels because he's not like a car identifying expert. You know, it can take like certain, you really have to be an expert to read freaking security surveillance footage anyways because it's so grainy and horrible to read. And on top of that, you really have to know what you're looking for when it comes to the different kinds of models and the variances from different one year to the next year. You know, when you're looking at cars and identifying them on a video, you really need to know cars. Like not just Yes, this is a black car and this is a dark looking car, and therefore I think it's Richard Allen's car. No, it doesn't work that way. And there are many reasons to believe that it was not his car that they're trying to put in front of the jurors as being his. So, what distinctive characteristics from Richard Allen's vehicle leads you to believe that that vehicle is his? I think I could start, first of all, by detailing with the general shape and appearance of the vehicle is consistent with the one in the Hoosier Harvestor video. It is a hatchback, and the shape, if you look at it with the vehicle that's depicted at the CVS parking lot, is in general shape and appearance to be the same, the taillights, the bumper, and other features. What other features? Other features that I'd like to talk about are the rims and wheels on the vehicle. If you'll notice, the at the picture that shows the vehicle parked at the CVS parking lot, the vehicle has a black sports type rim, which have spokes on the rim, which makes it possible for to be able to see daylight through the other side. This is important because when you look at the vehicle depicted on the Hoosier Harvestor video, you can see daylight coming through from the other side of the vehicle as it's traveling westward on County Road 300 North. That time that you see the vehicle on the Hoosier Harvestor video, is that also significant? It is. Why is that? In Lieutenant Dulin's report, he detailed that Mr. Allen told him that the vehicle had arrived at the location where he said he parked at, which would be the CPS building, or as they described it, at the Farm Bureau building, at about 1:30. The vehicle depicted in the security video shows it at almost 1:30, which would be 1:27 p.m. And just for clarity, I'm going to ask you to step down here. I'm going to try to make this go a little quicker. Where on the map that you see depicted, which is States Exhibit 5, is the old CPS building or the Farm Bureau building? If you look at I think, the left-hand portion of the map and about maybe 5 or 6 inches down on the top, maybe 12 or 15 inches from the left-hand side, there is a building situated next to is it this building here? The Heartland Highway. And yes, it's if you'll point to it again, I'm sorry, this building here, that building right there. Okay, after you gathered this information, what did you do next? Well, naturally, we followed up on this information. We wanted to talk with Mr. Allen, so we drove to the location Mr. Allen's residence is at, which is on Whiteman Drive, located in Delphi, off of County Road 200 North. Do you know what date you did that? Yes, we did. I do. We talked to him or made the arrangements to do this and did it on October the 13th of 2022. And did you drive to his residence? I did. Did you make contact with Richard Allen? Yes, we knocked on the front door. He came and answered the door, and we spoke with him at his residence. And I may have missed this, but who were you with? Tony Liggett, now Sheriff Tony Liggett. And once you spoke to Richard Allen at his residence, what happened next? We advised Mr. Allen we wanted to ask him questions concerning our investigation. We specified what the investigation was about. We advised Mr. Allen he was under no compilation, compilation to come to us or to come with us, under no obligation to come with us. We informed him he was not under arrest and he was not in custody and he could leave at any time. Mr. Allen agreed to come with us, and we transported him, with his consent, to the investigation center of the station where we talked to him. Was he put in handcuffs? No, he was not in handcuffs, and he was in plain clothes. We were in plain clothes as well, too. Did you transport him in a police vehicle? I think it's a 2014 Buick. That's what I went to pick him up in. But it's unmarked, is that correct? It was unmarked, and it's not necessarily in any way interpreted to be a police car. And what happened next? Once at the location where we were at, in the interview room, I advised him of his rights in accordance with Miranda and made sure he understood his rights, and he said he understood his rights, and we started asking him questions about what happened on February the 13th, 2017. If they start reading you your rights, that means they already think you're guilty. And anything you say after they read you your rights, they are trying to use to convict you of something. So just don't talk. That's really the key in this. And what information did you gather from Mr. Allen on that date, February? Let me back up. That's a poorly asked question. What information did you gather from Mr. Allen as to his whereabouts and what he did on February 13th of 2017? In essence, now remember this is 5 years later. In essence, Mr. Allen told us that he had gone to his mother's house, which he lives in Miami County, north of Peru, that morning, and he had visited with her. He said that he was off that day. His wife, Kathy, was working that day as well. He said that he had left his mother's house around 11 o'clock to 11:15 and then returned to his residence and picked up a jacket, got a jacket, and then he drove out to the trails and went to the park. He said that when he first got to the trails, he walked at the heads of the trail, past three girls, and didn't see anybody else. He said he was on his stock ticker on his phone, looking at his stock ticker, and he walked towards the high bridge. And did he tell you where he parked? He couldn't remember exactly where he had parked. He believed he had parked at an old building at that location. Did he tell you what time he arrived at the trails? Mr. Allen said that he had arrived at the trail at 12 o'clock and had left at 1:30 p.m. Consistent with what we heard in his video, his not confession, but um he never confessed anything. His interrogation. It turned into an interrogation. It was just him going to pick up his car, so he thought, and it turned into an interrogation, which then turned into his arrest. He always said 12 to 1:30. So they're trying to make him fit into this 1:30 3:30 time window so that he could be the guilty guy. And did he tell you where he was headed or which direction he was traveling on the trails? He told us that he had started at the entrance to the trail or the trailhead and walked to the high bridge, towards the high bridge, which would be towards the end of the trails. And did he tell you what happened or what he did when he got to the Monon High Bridge? Mr. Allen said that he went out to the bridge and looked at the fish and said that he had walked all the way out onto the bridge, or at least the first platform. You know, my eyes are getting kind of strained here. I'm going to um, put my glasses on because I'm struggling to see here. So, been reading a while, so need my glasses. Sorry. But it's glare. All right, so Mr. Allen said that he went out to the bridge, looked at the fish, walked on the bridge, and at least went to the first platform. So I'm going to ask you to approach the map again, please, and from the information you collected from Richard Allen, can you explain to the jury the route of travel that he took once he got to the trails? Well, Mr. Allen told us he had started at this location, which he said he parked by the old buildings, so we assumed it's this location here, and then walked down the trails from this, what we call, at least I call it the trailhead, and then came on the trail towards the east and walked towards the high bridge, which is not shown here. So the high bridge isn't even. Why do I look so dark? I'm gonna put my light, a different light on. Oh, my whatchamacallit went out. My essential oil thing went out. That's another reason why it's so dark. Anyways, so he would have walked, or he told you that he walked to the Monon High Bridge? Yes, that's correct. And he also indicated to you that he had ran into or met three girls? Yes. Did he indicate where he ran into those girls at? From what we could tell from his conversation, we believed it was somewhere at the beginning of the trailhead. And which direction? Did he tell you which direction the girls were traveling? They were traveling away, and he was walking towards the high bridge. I interpreted that to be he was coming this direction and they were walking that way. Ask you to have a seat back at the witness stand, please. Did he describe that vehicle he was driving on February 13th? He believed it was his 2016 Ford Focus, his black Ford Focus. And is that the same vehicle that he had? Or let me back up. Is that the same vehicle that he had in 2022? Yes. Did he recall the route that he took to get to the trailhead? He possibly believed that he had gone through the country, wasn't sure. He said normally he goes to the trail through the city, but may have gone through the county. And I'm going to ask you to approach the map again. For the record, we're looking at States Exhibit 5. Again, point out the trailhead on the map, please. The trailhead is here. And where? You're familiar with where Richard Allen lived? Yes. And went to his house to pick him up? Yes, I did. Where does he live? Well, it's not pictured on the map, so the best coordinates I could give you would be it would be probably down in this area south of this location. And he told you that he possibly went through the city or through the country. Is that correct? That's right. And did you build upon what he meant by those two descriptions? I'm guessing that the country is like the more wooded, secluded area that's not as populated. Is what the locals must be calling that. And did you build upon what he meant by those two descriptions? Yes. And so, what would be, show the jury, what would be the city way to the trailhead? Well, the best way to describe it to you with this map would be showing you that if he came through the city, he would have traveled out on what this is called East Main Street on County Road 300 North, which is this road that goes around the underneath of Hoosier Heartland Highway. That's the city route. What about the county route? Oh, there's another way too. They keep saying county or country. I don't know which is which. I think it's country, but the person who wrote these transcripts out has made numerous mistakes. So I don't know if it's country or county, but I'm gonna go with country because that's what I think they've been saying previously. He says the country route would have taken him from his residence traveling east on County Road 200 North out onto the country and into the country and about in here, it's not shown, this area, and over to 300 North and back towards the parking area. And which road would he have come in on had he taken the country route? He would have come in on 300 North. And would he have passed, if he had taken that route, would he have passed the Hoosier Harvest Store business? In order to get to this location, he would have had to go past the Hoosier Harvest Store security cameras. Okay, I'll have you have a seat back in the witness stand, please. And did he give you an indication of how long he was out there on the trails? I believe he estimated somewhere around an hour. And once he left the trails, what did he do? Or did he tell you what he did? He told us. I think I asked the question, what precipitated him making the report to the police that he had been out at the trail, and he told us that he had told his wife that he had been out on the trail the day that the girls had become missing, and did he describe to you what he was wearing that day? Yes. He said he was wearing either black or blue Carhartt jacket, blue jeans, a cap, and style boots or tennis shoes. Did he indicate that after he saw the three girls, whether or not he saw anybody else on the trail? Mr. Allen said that he didn't recall seeing anybody else out on the trails. Did he describe how the three girls looked? He said that one of the girls appeared to be older and maybe babysitting the other two. The other two were younger. Remember, the sister, or the two, there were the three girls, Bree and what's her face, and Bree's sister, Bree's sisters and stepsister, her sister and stepsister went to the trails. That's probably who he saw here. Because the two girls were like 14 years old, the sister, and then the older girl was Abby and Libby's age. I can't remember everybody's names and who when that testimony came in, but it's um ringing a bell. I can't remember, but that's I mean it's a possibility. I'm speculating obviously, but it's a good possibility that that's who he actually saw was Brianne Wilson, and that group of girls that she was with. Did you ask him to look through his phone? Yes, I did. And did he agree? At first, Mr. Allen agreed to allow us to look into his phone. He even gave us his passcode, but then he changed his mind. Did you then continue to question him? At some point, Mr. Allen became agitated with Sheriff Liggett and I, and he terminated the interview by walking out of the room. Prior to him leaving the room, did he recall what information he'd given to Lieutenant Dulin at the time that about when he was on the trails? He could not recall exactly what information he had given to Lieutenant Dulin about what time he had been out on the trails. He said he didn't believe he was out there as late as 3:30 p.m. So that is consistent with what he has been saying. Did you show a picture of what we've commonly referred to as Bridge Guy? I did. Did you ask him if that picture was of him? I asked him. The question was that I posed to him, in essence, was we needed to work out if the person depicted in the picture of Bridge Guy was him, and his response was strange, odd. He said if the picture was taken with the girl's camera, there's no way it could be him. And then the interview was terminated, is that right? Somewhere after that, he left the room, yes. After the interview was terminated, what happened next? We gave Mr. Allen a ride back to his residence and then began the process with the information we had accumulated at that point to get a search warrant for his house. Based on what? So far, based on what? I see nothing that could possibly be the reason. But, anyways. And was this house searched? It was. Were you able to confirm? I think I've asked you this, but I can't remember. Were you able to confirm that the black Ford Focus that he owned that vehicle back in 2017? Yes. How were you able to confirm that? When we were initially at Mr. Allen's residence before he came to the police department or the our initial center to talk with us, we asked him questions about the car. It was parked in his garage. He said that the car had been purchased when it was new in 2016 by him. I don't have any other questions, Judge. The court says, all right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and take our lunch break. While we're outside the courtroom, please keep your minds open. Please don't form any final opinions or conclusions about anything you may discuss, blah, 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 blah. She's going to send them off, tell them not to deliberate. The jury is out. The court says, all right, we'll resume at 1:30. Jody, you can go off the record. We, though, are going to continue because we're not done. We're going to finish Steve Mullin. So the court says, okay, are we ready to bring back the jury? Baldwin says, yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor, says Mr. McLeland. Bailiff says, all rise. Thank you. You may be seated. The court says, thank you, gentlemen. You may proceed with your cross, Mr. Baldwin. So now Mr. Baldwin's going to be doing the cross for the defense of Stephen Mullin. You are so desperate in needing Richard Allen's car. Whoa, what happened? You're so desperate in needing Richard Allen's car to be heading west on 300 North to be his car that right before lunch you lied to this jury. Mr. McLeland says, I object to the form of the question, Judge. Sustained. You testified to this jury. I mean, he starts out hot, right? You testified to this jury under oath that Rick told you on the 13th interview that he possibly drove the county route westbound on February 13th. That's what you testified to under oath before lunch. Is there a question? Answer the question. What's the question? Did you testify under oath before lunch that Rick Allen at your October 13th interview told you that he possibly drove the country route west on 300 North when when you interviewed him? Yes. And that's the impression you wanted this jury to have. Objection, Judge, to the form of the question. Sustained. Richard Allen's videotape is available for this jury to watch, isn't it? I'm not sure if I understand your question. You don't understand my question? Which videotape are you talking about, sir? The videotaped interview from October 13th, 2022. Yes, yes. And they then could see Rick's actual words and his body language and everything that was going on in that interview, correct? Yes. But we have to trust your words. Objection, Judge, to the form of the question. Sustained. I'm going to hand you the transcript of Richard Allen, October 13th, 2022 interview. I'd like you to point out to me and the jury where it is that Richard Allen says that he may have gone west on 300 North on February 13th, 2017, and let me know when you find it. This is important because this is how this how his car would have been captured if he had gone on that road west on 300 North. That's how he would have been captured on the Hoosier Harvest Store video. So this is important. He apparently never told Stephen Mullin that he took the countryway, but he needs him to take the countryway in order to pin him on the Hoosier Harvest Store video. See what I'm saying? This is why this is so dicey, this whole trial. Everything out of the investigators' mouths is you can't trust. Mr. Baldwin, I'm having trouble locating it, but I can tell you what I'm looking for is where he told me he had driven by the Mears entrance and was talking about seeing vehicles there. Was that a question? Just a statement. My opinion is not about that. It's about whether or not we'll strike that. I'm asking you to find where it is that you said that you testified under oath before lunch that Rick Allen told you that he went westbound. He may have gone westbound on 300. That's what I'm asking you to find. So Mr. Allen reported that he had gone past the High Bridge entrance, which is also covered at the Mears entrance, and so he said, what page are you on? Page 45. I believe, yes. Said there were a couple of vehicles there and may have, he thinks one of them was a sedan. He wasn't sure when he passed, and that's what he was referring to, having possibly gone that direction. Yes, that was my interpretation of possibly saying that. He also told you that he went his normal route, which is really his only route through town, eastbound, on Mr. McLeland says, Judge, I'm going to object to the form of the question. Mr. Baldwin's inputting his own opinion into the questions. No, he's not. He's forming questions his only route. I'm just objecting to the form of the question, Judge. Sustained on the form of the questions. When Richard Allen wasn't telling you the typical route that you wanted him to take, I'm going to object to the form of the question again. Sustained. You were trying to find out if Richard Allen's vehicle was the same vehicle that was headed westbound. I think it's upside down, sir. You're trying to find out if that was Richard Allen's vehicle when you were interviewing him, correct? We had already surmised it was his vehicle, but yes, it was nice to have him say that it's his. You have already surmised that it's his vehicle. But you're speculating. You don't know. You're guessing. You have no idea that it's actually his vehicle. You want it to be. You surmised that it's his vehicle? Mm-hmm. That's my surmising that you're trying to figure out if it actually was his vehicle, correct? We would like for him to be able to confirm that. And then go to page 35. If you want to go back to 34 for context, that's fine. 34, 35, 36. Read those and tell me when you're done. From the top, just read it to yourself. I'll have some questions about it. Okay. You asked him very particularly, quote, what day, which way do you think that you would have traveled to get to this building that particular day? Do you remember? You asked him that, correct? Yes. And he said, the loop around, which is in my town. Judge, can we approach? Says Mr. McLeland. Sure, of course. We've got a sidebar here. Judge, says Mr. McLeland, don't I guess I don't with what we're doing. The person who typed this up. Wow. Just wow. He's trying to impeach what he's saying, but use a deposition, but it seems like you're wanting, there you have an inaudible, to testify using the deposition. That's not the proper way to impeach a witness on trial. Court says, what are you trying to do? If you're trying to impeach him, then use the deposition, but using this is not proper impeachment. This is his statement, your client's statement. Mr. Bowman says, well, he misled the jury in what he said, and I'm trying to show that he misled the jury with what he said when he testified that Richard Allen said that he may have gone this way, but Richard Allen actually told him, I didn't go that way. Mr. McLeland says, well, you can ask him. I don't have a problem with you asking him these questions, but this other thing where you're using the transcript, you're having him read from that transcript. The court says that's improper. Mr. McLeland says, and you're trying to impeach him. The court says that's improper. Mr. Baldwin says, all right. Sidebar concluded. Richard Allen told you that he took the loop, which is 300 north eastbound. That's what he told you, isn't it? Mr. Allen, if I remember right, said he had possibly gone around the other way at different times and knew how to get there that way. I'm going to have you go through and look for that again. But my question is, when you asked him on that particular day, which route did you take? He told you he took the loop that takes you 300 north, headed eastbound. He said that was one possible route that he took, yes. Look at page 35, line 15 through 18. And I haven't done this the proper way. You were deposed by me and Brad Brosey, correct? Yes. And that was on October the 13th? I'm sorry, that was you interviewed Richard Allen. You're the one that was in the interview room with Richard Allen on October 13th, 2022, correct? Yes, I was. So you're familiar with this document? Yes. Which are you referring to, sir? Lines 15 through 18. Go ahead. So you asked Richard Allen, quote, on that particular day, which route did you take? And he said, the one that loops around, which would be 300 headed north, 300 north headed east. Mr. McLeland says, Judge, I'm going to object. He's inputting facts into the questions that are just inaccurate, and so I'd object to the form of the question. Sustained. How is he he's reading. Oh, I guess because he said it was because the one that the route that loops around is the one that is headed east, not west. That's why she sustained it, because he said that it was heading east. U.S. Richard Allen, well, later, after that area we just talked about, well, was there any other way that you drove? Do you remember asking him that? Yes. And you asked him that because right before that, he had told you in the video when he was pointing that he had gone through town and down 300 north headed east, right? Yes. Okay. So that was the first thing he told you. And then when he didn't tell you that he was headed westbound, you said, well, did you take another way? That's what you asked him, correct? I'd have to look at it, but possibly. Well, page 36, lines 3 through 5. Yes, I'm familiar now. Yeah? The question is, you asked him, did you? Is it possible you had gone a different way? Mr. McClellan says, Judge, object. Again, the form of the question. He's misquoting the questions are being asked in the interview and he's putting in his own words. Where? He's forming them the way he wants them formed. Those are not the questions that are asked in the interview. We have the transcript. He can read the transcript. Mr. Baldwin says, I'll do that. The court says, sustained. You asked Rick Allen, was it ever an occasion where you might have gone? Now we're going to the next transcript, so sorry. Where you might have gone to the park another way. You asked him that? If that's what you read accurately from the record, yes. And the reason you asked him that question was because he had told you earlier, as we just established, that he had been headed eastbound on 300 North. Mr. McLeland says, well, I'm going to object again, Judge. He's inputting facts into the questions that are just not true. Sustained. He testified to that under oath, Mr. Baldwin says, just a second ago, Judge. The court says, your question is what he's objecting to, which is what I've sustained. And then you asked Mr. Allen a second time, page 36, lines 19 through 25. You attempted a second time to find out from Richard Allen that he rode west. Objection, Judge, asked and answered. Overruled. Page 36, page 19. Yes, 19 through 25. Lines 19 through 25. He says, yes, I did. I should ask the question again. What was the question? There wasn't. You attempted a second time to ask Rick whether he rode west if he took another route of travel on February 13th. Yes, I did. And ultimately, he told you that if he were going to the Monon High Bridge Park, he would go through town. Isn't that right? Page 37, line 18. That's not how I interpret what he's saying. Well, you cut him off very quickly there, did you not? Richard Allen said if we were going there, we would go through town. And Judge, again, I'm going to object to the form of the question. He's reading the transcript into the record, and I'm not sure that that's the proper way to the transcript. Sustained. Words matter. Would you agree? Yes. Words in a report? Yes. Matter. Words on the stand matter. Would you agree? Yes. And especially when those words impact the timeline in a case like this. Is that a question? Yes. Can words impact the way that a timeline is detailed as described in a case like this? Yes. You told me, we'll strike that Richard took the scenic route when he was traveling that way. Is that true? Tell me that he took the scenic route? Did you tell me that he took the scenic route when he traveled that way? That was my interpretation of what he said, yes. Do you think if I asked you to look at the transcript of your test of your October 13th interrogation of Richard Allen that it would show that he said that? Mr. McLeland says, Judge, I'm going to object to the form of the question. I'm going to object to the form of the question, Judge. Sustained. Richard Allen also told you that he could have been driving his gray car on that day, didn't he? He did at the beginning, yes. Did he change his mind at the end? I believe he did. You believe, is that an interpretation or is that interpretation? Yes. You didn't tell the jury that on your direct examination that, oh, Richard Allen also told me that he might have been driving his gray car. Did you? I did not. You also told the jury, and you looked at them as you did. It was weird that Richard Allen said, if there's a picture taken from the girl's phone, it's not me. Remember testifying to that? I do. But what you failed to tell the jury is that he was responding to your question. Is that you, right? I think I mentioned that. So, I mean, that's important because context. So, is that you? And if you're being interrogated by an officer going, is that you, right? That's you? And then you would say, the only way that that picture is of me or whatever, if there's a picture taken from the girl's phone, there's no way it's me, is what he said, because he was nowhere near these two girls. He never saw those girls. So it's not a weird answer to me. If you're thinking about it from the aspect that he is being interrogated by these people now 5 years after the fact, and they're coming back at him and making him a suspect. And he's like, uh, why do I want to really help give you guys anything? But anyways, um, yeah, so he might be a little defensive, is all I'm saying. Like why he might have responded that way. Like if there's any, if that picture is taken from the girl's phone, there's no way it's me. Like getting kind of like he's kind of fed up with the attitude he's getting, so he's starting to give attitude back to the cops. Is my guess as to what's going on there. For your theory to work, Richard Allen's car had to be at the CPS lot between 1:30 p.m. and 4 p.m. Is that correct? I'm not sure if I understand the question, sir. Your theory is that Richard Allen's car was at the CPS lot between 1:30 and 4 p.m., right? That is what we believe, yes. Was there anything in your investigation that contradicts that Rick's car was at the CPS lot between 1:30 and 4 p.m.? Not that I'm aware of. So you ever heard of a lady named Betsy Blair? Yes. Does this look like a 1965 Mercury Comet to you? No. Remember, that's the car that Betsy Blair said she saw at the time that she was there. Mr. McLeland says, Judge, I'm going to object. He's asking him questions about evidence that has not been put into the record at this point. Has it been introduced? Baldwin says, This? Yes, this is, I'm sorry, this exhibit, we either marked it as 244 or 245. Ms. Diener says, Can we? Mr. McLeland says, Judge, may we approach? Court says, Yeah, come on up. This is ridiculous. Mr. McLeland says, She was, and then something that we don't get to know. They'll just recall Betsy Blair. More inaudible. Okay, I'm not asking, says Mr. Baldwin. Mr. McLeland says, So that's my problem, Judge. Mr. Baldwin says, I'm not asking if Betsy Blair said that. I'm asking if that's what it looks like. The court says, Well, you're implying because you said, Is this? Have you heard of Betsy Blair? And now you're reintroducing evidence. Whatever she's going to testify to is not yet in evidence. Well, Judge, I would also ask if it looks like a Corvette. I mean, I would ask a ton of questions. I'm asking if it looks like this. Is it's a yes or a no? Mr. McLeland says, I don't know, inaudible. The court says, assuming facts, not in evidence. Mr. McLeland says, that's my problem. Once Betsy Blair testifies to that, inaudible, we don't know what she's going to say at this point and what she testifies to. Sustained. Sidebar conference over. Were you the law enforcement officer that was in charge of the evidence that was lost back in February of 2017? Judge, I'm going to object. It's outside the scope of direct. Sustained. No other questions. Do you see how many things they could have gotten more into, but they were stopped by McLeland? A lot. A lot. There were several areas where McLeland had a lot of objections here. And I think it's garbage because they should have been able to go into a lot of that. All right, we're going to have a brief redirect. Mr. McLeland says, Investigator Mullin, when you were testifying on direct and I would ask you questions, were you giving me direct quotes from Richard Allen? Not necessarily. I don't have any other questions. Mr. Baldwin? No, Judge, thank you. Does anybody on the jury have any questions for Investigator Mullin? Looks like we do. Uh, Wait, Mr. McLeland says, I'm sorry. No, you're fine. I think I said this before. I don't know why. We just went into a sidebar. Oh, we do have questions. Okay, so we are doing questions from the jury. She didn't say. All right, so the court says, No, you're fine. I think I said this before. I think jurors are reading our lips as we talk over here. What? The jurors are reading their lips? I doubt that, but okay. Mr. Baldwin says, "Oh, yeah." The court says, this is the question, did you investigate how many black Ford Focus 2016 vehicles were registered to anyone in the Carroll County zip codes?" Mr. McClellan says, "Good." Mr. Baldwin says, "That's fine." The court says, "Were you in an interview with Mr. Allen when he stated he didn't remember which way he looked or took to the trails?" Okay. Yeah. One more. "Oh, sorry," says Mr. Baldwin. The court says, "That's okay. Did you run registrations for other 2016 black Ford Focuses in Carroll County at the time of the homicide to find out who else might be? Is that